Tonight, H1N1 taking a heavy toll on children, with 11 more deaths reported this week and production of the vaccine falling behind. I'm Katie Couric. Also tonight, before the balloon took off, the boy said this.
I'm going to sneak inside.
But he didn't. Was it a hoax? The sheriff says no, but decides to ask the family a few more questions.
You tie down others. I told you to tie others.
Remember those holiday airfare bargains last year? Well, forget them. Prices this year are soaring. And the changing American family. More women bringing home the bacon.
It used to be like my dad gets home, and now my mom gets home.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening, everyone. The numbers are frightening. The number of deaths from H1N1 flu among children is rising, while the number of vaccine doses expected to be available this month is falling. The CDC reported today that H1N1 is now widespread in 41 states, 4 more than last week, and 86 children have now died from it. Plus, the agency says about 10 million fewer doses of vaccine will be available this month than was expected. National correspondent Jeff Glor now on supply falling far short of demand.
In Baltimore, thousands showed up at the city's first H1N1 flu clinic. Overwhelmed officials had to shut it down until they got more help.
Ready?
Yeah, here it comes.
Good.
I was hoping to come earlier, but of course couldn't because of school and work. I just hope they'll offer it again.
The same long lines can be seen across the country, and now it appears those lines will not be ending anytime soon. Iowa's waiting on more than 50,000 doses, Colorado 133,000 short.
We are seeing more and more vaccine become available. We wish it were more than it is, but at least we have some.
The CDC was hoping to have shipped 40 million doses by the end of October. The reality of having between 28 and 30 million makes for very difficult choices.
You call this the vault.
It's the vault.
Morris County, New Jersey's Health Department Chief Peter Summers has a job no one wants, doling out a precious commodity everyone is looking for.
We've only received a small amount at this point.
They chose to give their first wave of limited supplies to EMS workers.
8.
One of the groups on the CDC's priority list.
These 140 doses will go quickly.
Yeah, they're already pretty much spoken for.
The CDC has always known that what will become the largest public vaccination program in U.S. history would have some growing pains. But today's announcement of a shortfall comes at a critical time, when public anxiety is peaking and illness levels are rising.
What we really need to get across to the public is that this is going to be tough to have a systematic and rapid access to vaccine right now, and they better prepare for that over the next few weeks while we're telling them they should get their immunization.
The CDC calls this a challenging time, and today asked for patience.
People are kind of in a panic to get it, so I thought we would come out here and try.
But with the deaths of 11 more children this week, the fear is the flu may be arriving faster than the vaccine. Jeff Glor, CBS News, New York.
Dr. Jennifer Ashton is our medical correspondent on call tonight. Jennifer, why are we suddenly hearing about a shortage? We were being told by the government that the production schedule was right on track.
Well, the experts we spoke to today, Katie, told us that from the beginning, the estimates about the production timeline were ambitious and optimistic. In general, it takes 5 to 6 months to make a flu vaccine, and before you make it, you actually have to grow the virus, and this virus has been difficult to grow from the beginning.
Okay, so what if people can't get the vaccine? What should they do in the meantime?
Well, the common sense things, Katie, wash your hands, get plenty of sleep. If you're sick, stay home. One thing they should not do, however, is buy products listed on the internet that are promoted as flu treatments. The government issued a report this week warning people that items such as Tamiflu that are advertised online could in fact be fake.
Very important point. And meanwhile, there are reports that we're seeing some cases in pigs in Minnesota. What does that mean? Should we be worried?
Not surprising, Katie. We've known that this particular virus has strains that come from pigs. There's not any indication that the virus is mutating. So bottom line is people should not be afraid to eat pork. You cannot get the virus from pork.
All right. Dr. Jennifer Ashton, as always, thanks so much, Jennifer. For more on the virus and how to find the vaccine, you can go to our partner in health coverage, WebMD.com, and simply search H1N1. Turning to other news now, 24 hours later, it was still the talk of the country today, the boy and the balloon. Many expressed relief the boy was safe, others suspicions that it was all a hoax, and everyone was asking what really happened, including Don Teague.
3, 2, 1.
It was both terrifying and bizarre.
Oh my God.
Home video shows 6-year-old Falcon Heaney telling his brother,
I'm gonna sneak inside.
Though the tape provided by the family stops and restarts, it appears that moments later the balloon breaks free and takes flight.
Get in, put the down now!
In the chaos that follows, Richard Heaney doesn't seem to hear his older son, who repeatedly yells, Falcon is in the ship.
Dad, Falcon's in there!
Where?
In the ship!
After finally hearing his son was in the balloon, Heaney first calls the FAA and a TV station looking for help, then tells a 911 operator his son is flying away.
So we are sure that he's in that.
Yeah, we looked everywhere, and then my son just said, being terrified. He said, yeah, he went inside just before it went off.
The next few hours played out on televisions across the country. Authorities tried to plot a rescue, even scrambling 2 National Guard helicopters, as scores of emergency crews followed the flying saucer balloon until it crashed in a field 50 miles away. It was only 5.5 hours after the ordeal started that Falcon Heaney was found safe, alive. He'd been hiding in the attic above the garage.
I am unbelievably relieved.
It was gripping drama, but was it real?
If it was intentional, I just think as a mother that's very disturbing and very upsetting.
Some here have their doubts, including one of Richard Heaney's former business partners, who says the inventor and storm chaser, who was also featured on ABC's Wife Swap reality series, seeks the spotlight.
When I first heard about it, and when it was Richard, I have to say honestly, my first gut reaction was publicity.
Then came a barrage of TV interviews.
Why didn't you come out?
Including an unusual answer.
You guys said that we did this for the show.
But Richard Heaney says his son was confused by the television cameras and denies any of this was a publicity stunt.
The hardest part was visualizing him falling out and hitting the ground.
Authorities here are still tallying up the cost of the massive search and rescue effort. It will be tens of thousands of dollars. But they say they do believe Heaney's story.
It just seems like this is such a bizarre story that it's almost unbelievable. Everything tells the investigators that this was legitimate.
Investigators will re-interview the Heaneys again tomorrow, but say no charges are planned in a case that may be strange, but officials believe is true. Don Teague, CBS News, Fort Collins, Colorado.
Overseas, no let-up in the Taliban's latest killing spree in Pakistan. Today, 3 suicide bombers, including a woman, attacked a police station in the northwest. The blast destroyed part of that building and a mosque next door. 11 people were killed, most of them civilians. Since last week, Taliban attacks have killed more than 150 Pakistanis. Now, across the border, the U.S. military said today 4 American service members were killed by a roadside bomb in southern Afghanistan. No details were released. At least 25 Americans have been killed in Afghanistan this month, 247 so far this year. Meanwhile, officials there could announce as soon as tomorrow that there will be an election runoff. Investigators have disqualified so many of President Hamid Karzai's ballots, his vote total is expected to fall below 50%. So what would a runoff mean? David Martin continues our special series, Afghanistan, The Road Ahead.
It looks like the Afghan people will have to do it all over again. And it's not just the presidency of Hamid Karzai that will be riding on the outcome. Bruce Riedel, a principal architect of the Obama administration's strategy in Afghanistan, says the runoff is critical to American success.
The most immediate requirement we need is to fix the Afghan election fiasco. We have got to come up with a better solution than the one we have right now.
A runoff is not likely to produce a new president. Secretary of State Clinton has already declared Karzai the preemptive favorite.
I think one can conclude that the likelihood of him winning a second round is probably pretty high.
But, says Alexander Thier of the U.S. Institute of Peace, it gives Karzai a chance to erase the stigma which hangs over his victory in August.
The legitimacy of this election has been so tainted by the allegations of fraud that a runoff holds the promise in some ways of clearing away some of that illegitimacy.
The U.S. can't win in Afghanistan if the government it is backing against the Taliban is seen as illegitimate. But a runoff will take time.
It could delay, at least for another month and a half, our learning who the next president of Afghanistan will be.
And General McChrystal, the American commander in Afghanistan, is still waiting for the president to grant his urgent request for more troops.
This situation is not static. It's going downhill, and it's going downhill rapidly.
In August, McChrystal warned that without more troops in the next 12 months, the war could be lost. By the time the Obama administration makes a decision, he could be down to 10. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
And coming up next here on the CBS Evening News, the changing face of the American family. Dad's in the kitchen, mom's at the office. Remember Father Knows Best when Honey, I'm Home was always said by the dad? Well, things sure have changed. By the end of this year, for the first time, women are expected to outnumber men in the workforce. And according to a new poll, nearly 2 out of 5 mothers say they are now the primary breadwinners. As Seth Doane reports, the recession is playing a big role in this major transformation.
Laura Long always loved being a stay-at-home mom with her 2 kids. But now she's making more than sandwiches. She's the family breadwinner, too. Her husband, Russ, lost his job last year. Now, instead of managing securities on Wall Street, Russ attempts to manage the house.
Russ is trying. He's doing the best he can, but he's not a mom.
When we first met the Longs 9 months ago, Laura had just started a part-time job as a nurse. Now, with Russ's job prospects uncertain, she's gone full-time.
It's kind of like the opposite now, because it used to be like my dad gets home, and now my mom gets home. Mom, would you get over?
I feel like I'm never home anymore. I mean, I miss my kids. I do. I miss being home.
The Longs family story is becoming the new normal, since almost 40% of mothers are the main wage earner. That's difficult economically because women earn 77 cents to every dollar men make. And when the recession began in late 2007, men and women shared the same unemployment rate. But by the September, there was a gap as male-dominated jobs were hit hardest.
We got to pick up Lou now.
That means change in the workplace and at home.
But he's been trying to do dinner. He's gone to food shop. We make a list now, like every week. Everybody writes on the list what we need and what we have to get.
Is this one of your lists?
Well, that's my morning list on mornings that I have to go in early.
And things don't always run smoothly.
Well, there are 2 issues: dinner and homework. And those are always the 2 big issues, because I don't really think much about dinner. I figured out we'll whip something together.
My mom always wants dinner to be perfect.
It can be hard for mothers to redefine their roles.
She used to be the one at home making sure that they were not eating ice cream for dinner. Now she's got to depend on someone else, and that's pretty scary.
Even as the family dynamic shifts,
we'll all have dessert together in the living room.
A new poll suggests the old way still looks pretty good. More than half of both men and women agree that it is better for a family if the father works outside the home and the mother takes care of the children. The Long kids disagree.
Ben told me he likes having Russ home.
I'm sure he does.
Why do you say it like that?
Because they do it. He's a lot more lenient than me.
Despite the growing pains, the Longs feel lucky.
I think that me and my brother have gone to bond with my dad a lot more.
Really?
Yeah, and get a better relationship.
By accelerating change, this recession is redefining the roles in American family life.
Dinner looks good.
Seth Doane, CBS News, Old Tappan, New Jersey.
Now to a very different family issue. The FDA today approved the vaccine Gardasil for boys and young men between the ages of 9 and 26. It prevents genital warts by blocking the human papillomavirus. The vaccine is already approved for girls and young women. For them, preventing HPV also means stopping the leading cause of cervical cancer. Coming up next, cleared for takeoff, holiday airfares. It's the biggest IOU Uncle Sam has ever written. Government figures out today show for the last fiscal year, which just ended, the United States spent a record $1.4 trillion more than it took in. That's 3 times more than the year before. Also on the rise, holiday airfares, those bargains you remember? Nancy Cordes tells us they're just a ghost of Christmas past.
All year long, air travelers have been enjoying bargain basement fares, 12 to 14% cheaper than last year. But that's about to end.
The rates were reasonable. This was about a week ago, and then they went up a couple $100s a few days later.
She got socked by new industry-wide fare hikes, along with a first-time ever $10 surcharge for flying on the busiest travel days, like the Saturday before Christmas.
The airlines have to shore up their bottom lines in a slow period.
Travel expert Rick Cini says carriers were caught off guard last holiday season by a recession-induced drop-off in demand, which forced them to hold fire sales to fill seats. Don't expect those deals this year.
If you wait until after November 1st to buy your ticket, you're going to probably end up with some of the steepest prices you've ever paid for holiday travel.
That's because the airlines dealt with the decline in travel by cutting flights to levels not seen since 1999. Come the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, there will be nearly 6,000 fewer seats on flights to Cincinnati than there were last year. That's a 23% drop. To Hartford, Connecticut, nearly 15% fewer seats. To Tampa, Florida, nearly 12% fewer.
If you're right now planning on taking a flight on Wednesday night and coming back on Sunday for Thanksgiving or the same thing just before Christmas, those flights in the low fares have been either blocked out or already purchased.
And with airlines planning to shed more seats next year, one new study predicts Americans will take 74 million fewer flights in 2010 than they did last year, a nearly 10% drop.
We won't rebound to that till about 2016. It's going to be a very, very slow air traffic rebound.
As usual, the more flexibility you have, the more likely you are to get a deal. In fact, just avoiding that Wednesday before Thanksgiving could cut your fare in half, Katie.
All right, good to know. Nancy Cordes in Arlington, Virginia. Thanks, Nancy. You may have thought the holidays were already here if you were in the Northeast today. A storm dumped as much as a half-foot of snow on State College, Pennsylvania. That broke a century-old record for early snowfall there. Strong winds brought down trees throughout the region, and the messy weather is expected to continue into tomorrow. Now, a long-term forecast, the Arctic Ocean without ice. Imagine people swimming at the top of the world. A British scientist said this week global warming will leave the Arctic ice-free during the summer within 2 decades. He said the ocean will freeze up again each winter, but that summer thaw could endanger polar bears and seals. Coming up next, the American spirit. He'll stop at nothing to save a homeowner from foreclosure. We end the week with a man who's out to rescue a dream, the American dream of owning a home. With at least 1 in every 136 homes at risk of foreclosure, he's persuaded mortgage holders to renegotiate with borrowers at events like this one today in San Francisco, expected to attract 60,000 people. And how does he do it? As Anthony Mason shows us, he uses a heavy dose of the American spirit.
We're going to do a picket line.
He calls himself a bank terrorist.
Let's go. Keep the line going.
Bruce Marks has introduced guerrilla tactics to the mortgage crisis.
Come on in, everybody, come on in.
Invading the lobby of J.P. Morgan Chase. Dropping furniture on the front lawn of Fannie Mae. In his campaign to help struggling homeowners restructure their loans through a nonprofit agency he founded 20 years ago, Marks has declared war on American banks, and it's personal.
It's personal for the homeowners who are being victimized. We're going to make it personal for the CEOs. So we bring the mortgage crisis to their front door, and we are relentless.
This year, he led hundreds of protesters to the home of Morgan Stanley CEO John Mack. It paid off.
I get a call on my cell phone 20 minutes later that we want to work this thing out.
He's bullied the biggest banks into submission. They've struck deals with Mark's company, the Neighborhood Assistance Corporation, that over the past 2 years have helped 100,000 people restructure their loans and get lower payments.
Gotcha. Some people say, look, these people shouldn't have been in homes in the first place. They can't really afford them.
The problem is not who we made mortgages to, it's the mortgage product.
Good morning!
Across the country, Marks organizes arena-sized mortgage counseling sessions, which have drawn more than 300,000 people.
How many people are actually waiting?
Why does he do it? As CEO, Marks earns $150,000 a year.
We're going to save your home.
But the root of his almost religious fervor may be the severe stutter he had as a child. Marks says it made him sympathize with others who were held back, whether because of poverty or race. But what some see as his fighting spirit, others view as a publicity grab.
I've been called all kinds of things. So whether it's Robin Hood or bank terrorist or whatever one wants to call it, but one thing that people don't say is that we're not effective.
America's banks will testify Bruce Marks doesn't stutter anymore. They hear him loud and clear. Anthony Mason, CBS News, New York.
And that's the CBS Evening News. I'm Katie Couric in New York. Thanks for watching this week. Have a great weekend. Good night.